What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be breaking down the DDoS Field Upgrade in Modern Warfare 2, because this field upgrade is often misunderstood and there's a lot of little interactions that I was completely unaware of before doing this testing, and I'm excited to share the results with you guys today. So let's start it off with the description in-game. With the DDoS, it's a device that deactivates electronics and disrupts enemy sensors in the immediate area for a short time. And that sounds fairly self-explanatory, but that's not very much detail. It doesn't tell you exactly which electronics or items that this counters, and whether or not it will disable or destroy them, so that's what we're going to be covering today. But before that, let's get into more of the basics with the DDoS. The charge time for this field upgrade is quite fast at 79 seconds. Keep in mind, of course, that's the base value. You will be getting it faster if you're also earning score in a match. Next, let's have a look at the effective range of this, and with this, you can actually see when a device is within your effective range, and as we can see here, it's 25 meters. And that means any device that's within 25 meters of you when you activate it, it will get EMP'd. However, it's also worth noting that with the DDoS, when you activate it, it remains active for a total of 6 seconds. And with this aspect of it, there's a 12.5 meter radius that surrounds your character model for that 6-second duration, and any player that gets within that 12.5 meter range while your DDoS is active, their heads-up display will still be scrambled, even if they were far outside of the range when you activated that DDoS to begin with. And this is what the effect looks like on the receiving end for enemy players that get DDoSed. Basically just scrambles all of the elements of their heads-up display. And if you are using an optic, it kind of seems hit or miss, but oftentimes it will disable your optic as well, or it will blur your optic's reticle. But this seems inconsistent. Some sites don't appear to be affected by the DDoS at all. Now, another thing that's important to note is you don't need a line of sight to affect an enemy player with a DDoS. It does work through walls just fine, as if the walls didn't exist. So all that matters is the range at which you are away from the enemy player or equipment. Also, as an added benefit, when you DDoS an enemy player's equipment, it will also show an outline of that equipment through walls, kind of like if you had the spotter perk equipped. And that's a nice bonus with it as well. And then finally, something I wanted to point out, this is a common misconception. In the game's current state, at least, with the DDoS, the devices in range indicator doesn't include enemy players. This only includes pieces of equipment, and therefore you can't use this as a method of detecting players themselves, only their equipment. And with that, that pretty much covers it for the basics of how the DDoS works in this game. Now, more importantly, let's have a look at what kind of equipment and score streaks and field upgrades the DDoS will counter and what it will not counter. When it comes to this, based on my testing, there's only 2 pieces of equipment that the DDoS will straight up destroy. We're not talking about disabling for a short period of time or anything, but it literally just destroys it entirely. And this includes the decoy grenades as well as the snapshot grenade. With both of these, if you activate a DDoS and one of these is within your 25 meter range, it will destroy that piece of equipment, and you'll get some score for doing that. Now, in the next category, I have all the equipment that a DDoS will disable, but it will not destroy entirely. So with this category, as long as the DDoS is active and you're within the range of that equipment, that piece of equipment will be disabled, but the moment your DDoS runs out, that equipment is re-enabled again. This category includes the Claymore as well as the Proximity Mine. For both of these, they just won't trigger at all as long as you're within the range with an active DDoS. This also includes the C4, and with this one, you can see the enemy player is trying to manually activate the C4, and it won't explode as long as the DDoS is active. And then also, the spotter scope gets scrambled if you're within the range of an enemy player trying to use a spotter scope, but they can still mark you with that. And also, the heartbeat sensor will not show any dots on it if that person is within the radius of somebody using a DDoS. As for all of the other pieces of equipment, I tested every single one of them, like drill charge, thermite, frag, semtex, tear gas, all of these. The DDoS has zero impact on them whatsoever. So there we go, that's the equipment. Now I wanted to move into the field upgrades that the DDoS has an impact on. And with this, there are 3 field upgrades that a DDoS will just immediately destroy. This includes the tactical insertion, the munitions box, as well as the smoke airdrop. Although with that, you must be hitting that smoke airdrop before it drops the smoke, otherwise you'll get the full effect of the smoke. So you do really have to be on the ball if you want to disable a smoke airdrop with a DDoS, since you often don't get much of an indicator that that smoke airdrop's even coming in. Then let's talk about all the field upgrades that a DDoS will disable. Again, for these ones, it's just temporary. The moment that DDoS runs out, these field upgrades will be re-enabled again. And this includes the trophy system, the tactical camera, and this is what it looks like with the tactical camera on the enemy player's perspective if they're trying to use it while it's being DDoSed. The inflatable decoy is also included here, but only before it's triggered. Like when you throw that box on the ground, it hasn't been triggered yet. If you have an active DDoS, you won't trigger that inflatable decoy to pop up. However, once that inflatable decoy is popped up, then the DDoS has no impact on it whatsoever. This also includes the portable radar, the suppression mine, and this one's actually quite interesting. The DDoS will not only prevent the trigger of the suppression mine, but also if the suppression mine has already been triggered and it's active, activating a DDoS within the range of it will shut it down for the duration of the DDoS, and then once your DDoS runs out again, the suppression mine will just reactivate and continue going, which is pretty interesting. For all of the other field upgrades I tested, the DDoS had no impact on them. However, one interesting thing is with the recon drone, it will count as a device within your range, and you can DDoS it, and it will say that you disabled the recon drone, but at least in the custom games where I'm testing, the DDoS doesn't actually impact the recon drone at all. The heads-up display doesn't even get scrambled. You can fly around and mark enemies just fine. So that one's quite interesting, and maybe it's just bugged out for custom games. It's not something I can really easily go and test in a controlled environment in public matches. But I did find that one to be interesting. And then finally, I did want to test the DDoS against a lot of the score streaks in the game, or at least the score streaks that make sense for a DDoS to be countering it. Obviously, for many of them, they'll be just so far out of the potential range of the DDoS that it's irrelevant. The first thing is the cluster mine. The DDoS does disable the cluster mine just like it would with a proximity mine or a claymore, so it only disables it while the DDoS is active. The moment that DDoS wears off, the cluster will reactivate. This also includes the sentry gun. The DDoS will disable that, but again, after that 6-second timer, it will re-enable itself. Then when it comes to the Wheelson, the DDoS will disable the Wheelson's ability to fire the gun, but it doesn't disable the Wheelson's ability to drive around. So it can still be mobile, it can still be moving around the map. It'll just be unable to fire the gun within the range of a player using DDoS. And then finally, with the bomb drone, this seems to work the same as the recon drone, where it says that you disable it with a DDoS, but nothing actually happens. You can still use the bomb drone just normally. Again, perhaps this is just a custom game bug, but that's what I experienced with my testing. And with that, there's just one last thing I wanted to mention here that applies to Modern Warfare 2, but more so just the ground war or invasion game modes. And this is the DDoS will also disable a vehicle for a short period of time. So there's definitely some utility there outside of the regular 6v6 experience. And with that, that's finally going to wrap it up for today's breakdown on the DDoS field upgrade in Modern Warfare 2. Overall, this is an excellent field upgrade for dealing with enemy equipment. It's also great for just racking up some extra score throughout a match if that's something you're interested in doing. Simply because all you have to do is wander around with that. The moment you see some devices within range, hit the button, and you've got some free score for yourself for disabling that equipment or enemy players. And while this isn't quite as powerful as like the EMP grenade in many past Call of Duties that would just straight up destroy any equipment within the radius, it is still excellent for a temporary counter to so many of the pieces of equipment in the game, and therefore it is a very versatile field upgrade, and I think it's a great choice to use. Of course, those are just my thoughts on the DDoS, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this field upgrade in the comments down below. Do you guys think this is in a really good state? Do you think it needs a buff? Do you think it needs a nerf? Just let me know all of those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.